I did a research. I've seen where several island country has this kind of problems where after a certain period of time, the oil coolers are warping and cause the massive oil leaks. Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Bagwin the DIY Auto. Now today I was on my way home and my engine oil light came on. It was kind of a little scary, so I pulled over and opened the hood and turned the engine off and checked my oil levels, and I noticed there was no oil on my dipstick. So I went over to the gas station and I got me 2 quarts of oil, poured it in, started my engine up, and I noticed there's some seepage going on down in this area here where the oil filter is. In this area here, you can see here is the oil filter, and down there is the oil cooler in that area. So when I look down there, I noticed there's some oil spilled down in this area. So I started the engine up and I noticed after 2 minutes, my oil was gone. After I turned the engine off and checked my oil level, the oil that I just poured in it went. So I knew there's something broken down inside there. So what I did, I called AAA's and they towed my vehicle to my house here. So I'm going to go into that process to see where that oil leak is coming from. So guys, so here I am, and the first process I will be doing here is disconnect my battery for safety. And then after disconnect my battery, I'm going to take off my engine cover here. And then after my engine cover, I'm going to remove my intake duct right here. This is from the air cleaner. It goes towards your intake section of your engine. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove all my electrical components, and then go to my upper intake. But before I get to my upper intake, there are 2 brackets on this engine here. One is on the forward side of the engine, and one is on the right side of the engine. Let me take this cover here off that I can give a clear view. Now here is the bracket that I'm speaking of. This bracket here that support the upper intake right here. This bracket is right here that support the upper intake. Here is the upper intake, and there's one forward. Here's the other one right here. Here's the other bracket that support the upper intake. Okay, so here okay, if you look down here, you can see a puddle of oil down in here. It's a lot of oil that sits down here, and I can see where the oil came from in this area here. So I can tell it's coming from the oil cooler area because pulled from that side and it drained all the way out through here and then all over the transmission right here. Okay, so now I need to do a troubleshooting to see if I can figure out where this oil leak's coming from. So stay tuned with me guys, and I'll go from here. This line is under field pressure. I don't want to disconnect it, so I'm just going to put it aside, just over here, out of the way for now. Now here is your oil cooler. This is the oil cooler here. That's the oil filter. It's attached to the oil filter housing, which is attached to the oil cooler right here. So here are the bolts. They have already loosened up. Need a 1/4 inch socket and a T20 bit. So these loosened up already. Once you loosen these up, then we go ahead and disconnect. Here's another plug down here for this switch down here. Okay, one of them is for oil temperature. So these two connectors disconnected. Now we can go ahead and pull up on my oil cooler. Now here's the hose right here and a clamp. I have already expanded and disconnect this hose right here and easily take it apart just like that. And this is the oil cooler. Now the O-rings are right here. There are 5 O-rings, one here, one there, one there, one there, and there's one around here for when you pour in the oil, it pours down inside here, prevent from leaking. So there are 5. So here is the kit I purchased from O'Reilly's, and there are 5 seals in it. So now I have the oil cooler in my hand here. The next step is get it all cleaned up all the surfaces here, remove all the oil that spilled down here, cleaned everything up, and then I can go ahead and start the process of reinstall the oil cooler. So now you can see how the oil and where the oil was leaking from by the big puddles right here. It travels all the way in the back here, all the way over the transmission, and finds its way down to the ground. And you can tell it's a lot of pressure here because once the engine is running, you got a very high oil pressure here, and it's exceeded out of the oil cooler around from the O-rings and exit through here and made all these big puddles. Okay guys, so now I got the oil cooler is all cleaned up, and also the surfaces here, the base where the oil cooler sits down there, and the upper intake surfaces here, it's all cleaned up. Now I can go ahead and install my new O-rings on my oil cooler. So this is the installation for the O-rings for my oil cooler. Now I got my O-rings all installed in my oil cooler base here. Now I can go ahead and install the oil cooler down there. Okay, sits flush. Now I can go ahead and start the process of running down my bolts. I don't have a torque specs on these bolts here, so I'm just going to use my muscles and torque these bolts down evenly and nicely. So here I am. Put them very evenly. Now I'm using a 1/4 inch extension and a 1/4 inch ratchet handle with a 1/4 inch socket, so I cannot over torque these bolts here. Okay, so now the oil cooler is installed. I can go ahead and reconnect my plugs here. Okay, so this is the original oil cooler. I have installed new O-rings and installed it on the engine, started the engine, and I still had a massive oil leaks. So I did a little research, and what I found out is on the 2010 through 2015 Town and Country, it's very common on the Pentastar. On the Pentastar engines, oil cooler has a tendency of warping and cause the massive oil leaks. So I have removed it from the engine for the second time, and I decided that I'm not going to go back with it. I'm going to order a brand new one. So I went on Amazon and I purchased this brand new one here. Came with brand new O-rings, all 5, and also seals for the upper and lower intakes. Now this oil cooler here is a combination of oil and coolant. The coolant is what used to cool the oil when it circulates through the oil cooler here, return back to the oil pan. So it's nice. Came with brand new oil sensor and coolant sensors. So now I can go ahead and install my seals on my upper and lower intakes. Put a little lubricants around here, around the O-rings here. And the same thing with my lower and upper intake seals. Now the upper and lower intake seals are totally different designs. You can see the upper ones are more rectangular shape. These are all the upper ones, and the lower ones has kind of a little curvature on it, so you can't go wrong on these seals. So first I'm going to connect my coolant hose here. Change this clamp here around. Then go ahead and tighten the clamp first. Okay. Make sure that my hose is secure there. Get a little tweak on there, one more tweak to make sure it's all tight. Good. The next is connect my plugs to my sensors here. This one there. Then I locked it. Make sure it locks. Now I can go ahead and place my oil cooler in position. There we go. Nicely sits in position there. Now I can go ahead and running down my hardware, my bolts. Okay, now the oil cooler is now in place. All the connectors are all connected. Can now go ahead and install my O-rings on my intake here, my low intake. Now the lower intake now in place, I can go ahead and running down the hardware or the bolts. The bolts here takes a T20 torque bits, which is this guy right here. And for the oil cooler bolts, it's a 1/4 inch socket. So I can go ahead and start running down the lower intake evenly. Okay guys, just make sure when you are running down these bolts, you do it very evenly. As soon as you start feel a little resistance, you stop and go to the next one. Make sure that the lower intake torqued or tightened evenly. You don't want it to cock, then it will cause the vacuum leaks and give your engine a rough idle. So it's very important to torque these bolts here evenly. I'm going back over it one more time just to make sure that I don't miss any one of these bolts. Just a little tweak for one more time here. If you want to order, I'll put the link in the description. So now I got the lower intake installed. I can now go ahead and connect my injectors. The injector's got a locking device here, which is the red tab here. And then once you pull up on this red tab, you compress this locking device right here and then pull it up. If you were to pull this plug up without release the locking tab, you will break the connector here. Now I can go ahead and start connect my injectors. Okay, Now I push down, tab right there, locks it. Next one. Locks that one in place, and here's the other one here. Locks that one. This one. Okay, and this last one here. Okay, so now all my injectors are connected and all the locking devices are locked. So now the next step now is to go ahead and install my upper intake. Let me put some lubricant on the upper intake here for a proper seating. Okay guys, I never mentioned about drain the coolant. It is a good idea to drain the coolant before you remove your oil cooler, because the oil cooler is a combination of coolant and oil, and once you raise the oil cooler off the base, there's water will get inside your oil pan. So it is a great idea to drain your radiator before remove the oil cooler. I usually change my engine oil anyway, but for information purposes, it's a good idea to drain your coolant before remove your oil cooler. In position here. Make sure that this seated properly here, and then just set your upper intake in position. Now it sits in position, and now it's time to go ahead and run down your bolts. Okay, that's all the bolts. It's all installed. The upper intake is secured. Now it's time for reconnect my front brackets here. There are two brackets in the front here. This one right here, two 10mm nuts attach these brackets here to the upper intakes for extra supports. This one there. The next one is here. And there's a stud right here. Okay, and this stud here is to support this harness right here. Okay, now these brackets in the forward here, there are two lower half-inch below here. And there's another one forward here. Just camera will not be able to pick that up, but that's the other end of this bracket here, down here. Okay. Okay, now the upper intake is all secured. It's time for me now to go ahead and reconnect all the other components like the hoses and all the wire harnesses, so I can go ahead and start reconnect these guys here. Okay, it's all connected. Locks that in, then push this pin down. This is all secure. Now I can go ahead and connect my dock. Now I got everything back together. The only thing I have left is the expansion tank. And then I can put the cover on. Then I can go ahead and pour some oil in. The oil is already drained, so I can go ahead and pour the new oils in and go ahead and refill my radiator. And then I can go ahead and start the engines up and check for oil leaks. Okay guys, so now I got everything together. I serviced the coolant. After the engine reaches normal operation temperature, I need to pour some more in it. The engine oil is all serviced. I got it where I want it. So now it's time for me to start the engine up and check for oil leaks. Now, this is where I'm going to be concentrating the most. It's down here. That's where the puddle, and that's where the oil was shooting up from down here, where the oil cooler is. So once I start the engine, I'm going to be looking down here if there's any oil pouring out of here. Also, back here with the transmission, it drains from back there all the way over here. So these are the areas I will be looking for oil leaks after starting the engine up. So let me go ahead and crank this engine and start it up and check for oil leaks. Okay, so now I see it's all dry down there. Before, there was oil coming up here, pouring out all around this oil cooler. So now I know the problem is solved. And also back here, there was oil shooting out back here, all over the transmission back in this area. So that's it, guys. The no oil cooler fixed the problems. So now I can go ahead and wait for the engine to reach normal operation temperature. Then I can finish service the coolant. This is the antifreeze that I used. And I will finish servicing the coolant. I'm going to turn the engine off and recheck my engine oil because it's a brand new filter and it's a brand new oil cooler and it takes up a lot of oil. So I'm going to turn the engine off and recheck my oil levels. See, right on the mark, safe mark. So I know the oil level is good. My coolant level is good. The engine is not leaking. Now it's time for me to install the engine covers. Okay guys, that's it. Now it's time for me to go ahead and do a road test. Okay guys, so now I'm doing a road test, making sure that the oil cooler can withstand the oil pressure, and I won't have any oil leaks after return back home. So here we go. Okay guys, now I'm back from the road test. I'm going to do a final check to make sure that there's no oil leaks and the engine is dry, and I'm going to remove the cover here. See, down there is dry. Before, there was a lot of oil pouring out from here, filling up the channel in here, and then it was running out back here. So you can see the new oil filter. I'm sorry. So now you can see the new oil cooler has fixed the problem. The engine is running smooth and nice. Now I can go ahead and reinstall the engine cover. And I can do a final check on my coolant. Make sure that my coolant level is good. That's the end of the project, guys. Close my hood. And that's it, guys. That's how you get to your oil cooler and replace it. This one here was warped around this area here. So once it was installed, this area here was not round enough. The seals were not doing their job, and oil was pouring out all around this area here and shooting up. So I had to do it twice. I did a research. I've seen where several town and country has this kind of problems where after a certain period of time, the oil coolers are warping and cause the massive oil leaks. So that's the way to do it. Okay guys, I just want to say thank you for supporting this channel, and please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you again. See you in the next video. Goodbye.